I was sitting in a coffee shop this morning, just watching people and listening to the hum of all these conversations. And it really struck me how miraculous it is. You have two people making sounds, interrupting each other, laughing, fixing their mistakes, all with cups clinking. And somehow they don't crash. It feels completely effortless.
It feels effortless, yeah. But that's the illusion, right? It's like the user interface design for the entire human species. It's supposed to feel smooth.
Right. Because when you actually try to map out what's happening, not just the words, but the mechanics, the timing, the psychology, it's a logistical nightmare.
It is. It's much less like a casual game of catch and more like air traffic control. You have these rigid rules, mathematical patterns, split-second predictions that your brain is just constantly running.
And you're not even aware you're doing it.
Not at all. You're just talking.
And that is exactly our mission today.
Yeah.
We're going to try and strip away that illusion of effortless chat and look at the real machinery that's working underneath. We're doing a deep dive into Chapter 8 of the book Dialogue, Computational and Formal Models of Conversational Interaction. It's by Raquel Fernandez.
It is a bit of a mouthful for a title.
It is.
But Fernandez is doing something really fascinating here. She's sitting right at that intersection of linguistics, how we speak, and artificial intelligence, how we teach machines to speak.
Okay.
And her whole point is that if you want to teach a computer to talk to a human, you can't just feed it a dictionary. You have to decode the hidden architecture of the conversation itself.
So if you've ever wondered why Zoom calls feel so awkward, or why you start mimicking a friend's accent, or why you can finish your partner's sentences, this is the deep dive for you. Let's start with the basics.
Okay.
In school, we all learned that language is made of sentences. Subject, verb, object, period. The cat sat on the mat.
Which is great for writing. I mean, if you're writing an essay, sentences are the gold standard. But Fernandez points out right away that if you try to apply that concept, the concept of a sentence, to spoken dialogue, the whole model just breaks.
It falls apart.
Yeah. Spoken language is a mess. It's spontaneous, it's fragmented, it's full of holes.
There's a perfect example in the reading from the switchboard corpus. Can you tell us a bit about what that is first?
Sure. The switchboard corpus is just this huge database of recorded phone calls that researchers use to study natural speech. It's totally raw data, no scripts, just people talking, and they have this transcript of two people just chatting about the weather.
And I want to read this literally, because if I handed this in to my 10th grade English teacher, she would have failed me on the spot.
Oh, for sure.
Speaker A says, weather-wise or otherwise. Speaker B says, weather-wise.
Okay.
Speaker A says, damp, cold, warm.
Damp, cold, warm. Grammatically, it's garbage.
Total garbage.
There's no verb, no subject. It's just three adjectives floating in space, but in the moment.
It makes perfect sense. I know exactly what they mean.
Exactly. So Fernandez argues we need better units of measurement than sentences. If we want to understand dialogue, we need to talk about turns and utterances.
Okay, so help us distinguish those. Because to me, they sound like pretty much the same thing. I talk, that's my turn, that's my utterance.
Not quite. Think of a turn as purely physical. It's about who has the floor. I start making noise, and then I stop making noise. That's my turn. It's bounded by silence or by you starting to speak.
Okay.
But an utterance is about meaning. It's an intentional unit of communication.
So in that weather example, damp, cold, warm is one physical turn because the person said it all at once.
Correct. And in that case, it also happens to be one utterance because it conveys a single packet of meaning. The weather is damp, cold, and warm.
But they don't always line up that neatly, right?
No, and that's where it gets really interesting. You can have one turn with like 5 different utterances in it. Hi, how are you? I'm fine. Look at this. Bye. One turn, 5 utterances.
Right.
Or, and this is my favorite part, you can have one utterance split across 2 people.
The whole finishing each other's sentences thing.
Exactly. They're technically called split utterances or collaborative completions. The source has this great example. Dan says, when the group reconvenes, and before he can even get to the verb, Roger jumps in with, they're gonna issue straitjackets.
Which is pretty funny. But when you think about what that implies,
yeah.
Roger didn't just guess the general vibe of the sentence.
No.
He knew exactly where it was going grammatically.
He knew the syntax required. He didn't just guess the idea. He completed the grammatical structure. And that tells us something really profound about listening. We aren't just passively receiving words like a paper recorder.
We're actively predicting the future. We're auto-completing real life.
We are. We're projecting the trajectory of that sentence milliseconds ahead of time. If we weren't, Roger would have stumbled. He couldn't have landed that joke so perfectly. He had to be running a simulation of Dan's sentence in his own head and running it faster than Dan was speaking.
That is just wild to think about. Okay, so we have the building blocks, turns, and utterances. But a conversation isn't just broadcasting data back and forth. We're doing things to each other with words.
Right, and this is the whole concept of dialogue as action. It comes out of speech act theory, which is, a cornerstone of pragmatics. The basic idea is that when you speak, you are performing an act. You're changing the state of the world.
Like at a wedding. When I say I do, I'm not describing how I feel. I am actually legally changing my marital status.
That's the classic performative example, yeah. But Fernandez argues this happens in every single conversation. She talks about dialogue acts. A question is an act. It demands information. An answer is an act. It supplies it. A reject is an act. It blocks a proposal.
And she points out that one sentence can be multiple acts. The example was, Bill will be there.
Right, Bill will be there. Syntactically, that's just a statement of fact. But if I'm worried about safety at a party and you say Bill will be there, that's a reassurance.
But if Bill is my enemy and you say Bill will be there, that's a warning.
And if you owe Bill money,
then it's a threat. Bill will be there.
Exactly. The function changes completely based on the social context. And these acts create what are called adjacency pairs.
This is huge. I think this explains so much about why conversations feel the way they do. Adjacency pairs are all about expectation.
It's the glue. It's the social glue that holds dialogue together. A greeting creates an expectation for another greeting. A question creates an expectation for an answer. An apology expects an acceptance.
It's like a handshake. If I put my hand out and you just stare at it,
the silence is deafening.
It becomes physically uncomfortable.
Because that expectation, the second pair part, is missing. But here's the nuance that Fernandez highlights. It doesn't have to be immediate. You can delay the second part, as long as you eventually close that loop.
The restaurant example from the source nails this. Okay, I'll be the customer, you be the waitress.
Oh, right.
So you say,
what do you have?
What's the soup?
Clam chowder, I'll have a bowl. See what just happened there. I opened a loop. What do you have? You didn't answer it. You didn't close it. Instead, you opened a sub-loop.
Right, I asked my own question. What's the soup?
Fernandez calls that an insertion sequence. It's like a little side quest. You have to resolve the soup question, the subdialogue, before you can go back and resolve the main ordering question.
And we keep track of all of this in our heads. Okay, open loop regarding lunch. Pause. Open loop regarding soup. Close soup loop. Resume lunch loop. Close.
Usually. We usually keep track until the stack gets too high and someone finally says, wait, what were he talking about?
Which is basically a Stack Overflow error in your brain.
It is. Which brings us to the real goal of all this structure. Why do we do it? Fernandez says it's all about grounding.
Grounding, okay.
Grounding is the why. If you take away only one concept from this whole deep dive, this should be it. Dialogue is not ping pong. The goal is not just to hit the ball back. The goal is to build common ground.
And this comes from Stolnaker's work, right?
Stolnaker, and then later Clark and Schaefer. Common ground is the sum of all the mutual knowledge, beliefs, and assumptions that we share. Every time we speak, we are trying to add another brick to that shared wall.
But, and this is the key part, we have to know the other person has the brick. I can't just assume you understood me. I need proof.
You need evidence. And Clark and Allwood break this down into 4 different levels of communication. It's like a ladder.
Okay.
Level 1 is contact. Is the channel even open? Level 2 is perception. Did you hear the noise I made? 3 is understanding. Did you grasp the meaning? And 4 is uptake. Did you accept or react to what I said?
So if I say pass the salt and you just stare at me, I'm stuck. I don't know if you're ignoring me, a level 4 issue, or if you didn't understand the word salt, level 3, or if you just plain didn't hear me, which is level 2.
Exactly. And grounding is that whole collaborative process of confirming we are both on the same rung of that ladder.
This is where that principle of downward evidence comes in, which is a great term.
It sounds super technical, but it's actually really simple and efficient. It just means that positive evidence at a high level automatically proves success at all the lower levels.
So back to the salt. If I say pass the salt, and you just pick up the shaker and hand it to me.
That action is level 4 uptake. By doing it, you have proven you were paying attention. You heard me and you understood me. You don't need to say, I have heard your request for sodium and I will comply.
That would be exhausting. And a little weird.
It would be robot talk. We skip all that because the action proves the understanding.
But what if I just say,
That's back channeling. It's a weaker form of evidence. It usually just signals level 1 or 2. I'm still here. I hear you making noise. It doesn't prove I understood something complex, but it tells you to keep going.
Which explains why talking on the phone to someone who is dead silent is so stressful. You lose the back channel.
You lose all the grounding signals, and when grounding fails, we have to stop and repair. We use clarification requests.
Like what? Huh. Say again?
Or more specific ones. The source has this great Goldoni Street example. Imagine I say to you, let's meet at the cafe on Goldoni Street. And you just reply, Goldoni Street.
Okay, depending on how I say
Yep.
that, it can mean 3 different things.
Right.
Tone 1, Goldoni Street? Like, do you say Goldoni or Bologna? I didn't hear
Yeah.
you. A perception problem. Tone 2, Goldoni Street? Like, where is that? I heard you, but I don't know the place. An understanding problem.
Okay.
Tone 3, Goldoni Street. Like, are you kidding me? That place is a dump. An uptake problem.
Exactly. You're flagging a problem, but you're being incredibly ambiguous about which level the problem is on.
And yet, most of the time, in a real conversation, I know exactly which one you mean.
Because of context. And this is the principle of least collaborative effort. We do the absolute bare minimum work necessary to keep the conversation moving. We don't draft legal briefs. We just grunt Goldoni Street and let context do the heavy lifting.
Okay, so that's grounding. It's this active, strategic effort. But then Fernandez moves into another section that I found kind of spooky. She talks about alignment.
Ah, yes. The interactive alignment model. This is Pickering and Garrett.
And this suggests that a lot of what we think is cooperation is actually just automatic biological copying.
Priming is the psychological term. The idea is that as we talk, we just start to sync up. We use the same words, match speech rates, even match syntax, and we don't choose to do it. It just happens.
There's this experiment in the book that really blew my mind. The one with the nun in the book. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, it's a classic study. So you have subject A, describe a picture. The picture shows a nun giving a book to a girl. In English, you have 2 valid ways to say this.
Right.
Option 1, the nun is giving a book to the girl. That's a prepositional object construction. Option 2, the nun is giving the girl a book. That's a double object construction.
They mean the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Just a style choice.
Exactly. But let's say subject A picks option 2. The nun is giving the girl a book. Now, subject B is listening. Then, subject B has to describe a totally different picture. Maybe a sailor giving a hat to a clown.
And just because they heard that sentence structure a second ago.
Subject B is statistically much, much more likely to say the sailor is giving the clown a hat instead of the sailor's giving a hat to the clown. They just copy the grammar.
That is so weird. It's like a virus. My brain is just photocopying your sentence structure without asking my permission.
It's a shortcut. Pickering and Garrett argue this creates a sort of cheap version of common ground. If we align our words and our grammar, we're more likely to be aligning our thoughts, our situation models, without all that hard work of grounding.
So we're just lazy.
We're efficient. If copying you helps me understand you faster, my brain will do it.
It explains why when you hang out with a certain group of friends for a week, you start talking just like them. You pick up their slang, their cadence.
It's almost impossible not to. But Fernandez does note that there's a big debate here. Is dialogue mostly this automatic priming, or is it mostly that strategic grounding stuff we talked about?
And what's the answer?
Probably both. We're probably surfing on automatic priming when things are going smoothly. It's autopilot. But the second there's a misunderstanding, we snap out of it and switch to that conscious strategic grounding to fix the problem.
Speaking of fixing problems, let's talk about when we mess up. Because if you look at a raw transcript of this conversation, even though we're trying to be professional, it's probably full of ums and frillies and restarts.
We call those disfluencies. And for a long time, linguists just treated them as noise, like just garbage errors, a sign that your brain stuttered.
But Fernandez says they actually have an anatomy. They're not random.
Not at all. They're incredibly structured. Levelt and Schreiberg mapped it out. Take a sentence like, you get people from other countries, other parts of the state.
Okay, simple mistake. I misspoke. I corrected it.
But look at the pattern. First, you have the referendum. Other countries. That's the mistake. Second, the editing term. That's a little flag that tells the listener a fix is coming.
Yeah.
And third, the alteration. Other parts. That's the fix itself.
It's like code. Delete X. Insert Y.
And because it's so structured, listeners use it. If I say the blue, the red ball, that no tells your brain to kind of empty its buffer of the word blue before I even say red.
So ums and ions aren't signs of stupidity. They're actually user interface cues.
They're help signals. They buy time for the speaker, but they also help the listener parse what's happening. In fact, some studies show that hearing an can actually help you recognize the next word faster because it signals that a difficult or uncommon word might be coming.
That is weirdly comforting. My ums are actually features.
They can be.
But this brings us to the biggest coordination problem of all. We've talked about what we say, but how do we know when to say it? Turn taking.
The traffic control system. This goes back to Sachs, Shegloff, and Jefferson in the 70s.
The core issue is the timing.
Right.
The gap between one person stopping and the next person starting it's tiny.
It's often just a few hundred milliseconds.
Which is faster than human reaction time.
Exactly. If I waited for you to come to a complete stop, then processed that you stopped, then decided to speak, then started moving my mouth, I'd be way too late. There'd be this long, awkward pause every time.
So we're back to prediction again.
We have to be. We're constantly listening for what are called transition relevance places, or TRPs. We hear your pitch drop, we hear the grammar closing out, and we think, aha, landing spot is coming up. We get ready to launch our turn before you've even touched down.
It's like merging onto a highway. You gotta match the speed and slide right in.
And just like a highway, there are rules of the road. Rule 1, if I select you, what do you think? You have to speak. Rule 2, if I don't select anyone, the first person to jump in wins the floor. It's a race.
And rule 3.
If nobody speaks, I just get to keep talking.
This explains the Zoom nightmare perfectly.
Completely. On video calls, that tiny audio lag messes up the timing of the TRPs. You think I'm done because of the silence, but really I was just pausing or the audio cut out. So you start.
And we crash. Then we both stop. Then we both start again.
Because all the subtle cues, the intake of breath, the tiny body language shifts, they're all gone or delayed or flying blind.
The source also mentions overlap. We think of people talking over each other as rude, but it says it's actually pretty rare.
The really hostile overlap is rare, yeah. Only about 5 to 12% of speech is overlapping.
Yeah.
And most of that is an interruption. It's that back channeling we mentioned, the the rights.
Right.
Those happen during my turn, but they're not trying to steal the floor, they're supportive.
So we have this unbelievably complex system: turns, acts, grounding, alignment, disfluencies, TRPs, and now the final boss. We have to teach a computer how to do all this.
This is the computational modeling section, and you can see now why it's so hard. The computer has to track everything we just discussed.
Everything.
The main approach Fernandez discusses is called the information state update. Think of the conversation like a scoreboard. The computer has its private information, what it knows but hasn't said. And then there's the public information, what's been grounded between you. Every turn updates that scoreboard.
But the really hard part is context. You mentioned elliptical fragments.
Right. If I ask you, where is the station, and you just say 2 blocks north, to a computer, 2 blocks north is a meaningless fragment. It's not a sentence. It'd have to link that phrase back to the previous question, figure out that 2 blocks is a distance and north is a direction, all relative to the station I mentioned 3 seconds ago.
We do that instantly.
Because we share a world. Computers don't. They need everything tagged. Researchers use these complex systems like DAMA-cell dialog-ACK markup using several layers to manually tag every utterance. This is a statement, this is a reject, this is a promise.
It sounds like trying to brute force empathy.
In a way, it is. We're trying to mathematically codify social instincts that we've been evolving for hundreds of thousands of years. It's like trying to teach a calculator how to improvise jazz.
You know, when we started this deep dive, I thought we were just talking about, chatting. But this is architecture.
It really is. It's a collaborative construction project.
We're building this common ground, brick by brick, fixing the cracks with repairs, synchronizing our blueprints through that automatic priming. It makes you realize that a good conversation isn't just about being interesting. It's about being a good collaborator.
Absolutely. It's about managing that shared reality. When you talk to someone, you're negotiating meaning. You're saying, I see the world this way, do you? And when they say, yeah, or that's a tiny little miracle of alignment.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, the listener. We've seen that conversation relies so heavily on grounding, on shared stakes, a shared environment, mutual risks to build that common ground.
So the question is, can an AI ever truly share common ground with a human?
Right. If a large language model has no body, no social standing to lose, no actual private beliefs, is it really conversing? Or is it just a very sophisticated ventriloquist act, mimicking the structure of conversation, the turns, the syntax, without the substance of grounding?
It can mimic the alignment, it can mimic the acts, but without a self to ground it all in, I'm not so sure it's a dialogue. It might just be a monologue with a really, really good echo.
Something to think about the next time you ask a chatbot to write you a poem.
Indeed.
That's all for this deep dive into the architecture of conversation. Thanks for listening.